Welcome to the Invisible India podcast. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Abhishek. We are a cross-cultural couple doing life in India, exploring the lesser-known mysteries of Indian culture,
Interviewing fascinating figures who have chartered new territories, and sharing life as we raise our multicultural family amongst the complexities of modern Indian life. Today we're going to talk about Banaras, Varanasi, Kashi, one of the most ancient living cities in the world.
One of the most popular tourist destinations that is not a big city in India, but it is. Varanasi is in the same range of places to go, the same level
Tier
of
Two
places.
city?
The same level of places to go as like Delhi and Jaipur and all this stuff for like the first time visitors. Everyone is recommended to go to Delhi, Agra, Jaipur, Udaipur, Jaisalmer, Varanasi, and those are like that will cover your North India one-time India visit. So basically, It is well known for that kind of tourism for foreigners coming into India, but Indians visiting Varanasi is a totally different ballgame.
Oh yeah. We are calling this episode Ghats, Gayi, and Ghanti. So riverbank, cow, and bell, which pretty much describe all the things that you are definitely going to experience if you are in Varanasi. So we would not be a proper podcast about India if we didn't at least talk about Varanasi. Right, honey?
Yeah. And because we went there recently a few weeks ago, so we are going to talk about that.
Yeah. So any travel blogger who feels the need to prove themselves worthy has definitely ventured into the dark and winding alleyways of Varanasi. So we want to talk about tips and tricks of doing it right on a budget and with kids. So a little bit of history. Do you want to share a little bit of history about Varanasi?
Basically, Varanasi, from what I recall, is the stuff that, is more from a popular cultural level in India, is that it is the religious city. It is the city that has it's one of the most holy river sites, and it has all these like banks along the river that is really supposed to be the auspicious or holy place for Hindus. Many people still wish that they will be cremated there. Their bodies will be burnt in Varanasi to receive some sort of liberation of souls. I would say just the significance of a couple of the temples there is very paramount for many North Indian Hindus and South Indian Hindus. It is one of the continuously inhabited cities in the world, but I know that it was remade in the middle, like by different rajas, maharajas. Throughout the kingdoms, it has been rebuilt, but it has been consistently inhabited
for 5,000 years. Is what the history says. So they have records up to 3000 BC of the city actually being inhabited and historical documents. So one of the big things that Varanasi is known for, Banaras, as it's also called, Kashi as it's also called, is that Gautam Buddha preached his first sermon there in Sarnath. So that's a huge reason why many people from all over the world visit Banaras as well, is because there's that special site existing there.
Yep.
There's so much more that we could go into about the history, but you can look it up. It's probably best just to read on Wikipedia if you're a real history nerd, but those are kind of the basic things you need to know about Banaras. So what are some of the things that you're likely to see in Varanasi?
If lots of people and... Yeah, I mean, this time I was surprised when we were visiting like many other North Indian cities, there's a lot of migration happening from the villages to the towns, which is making Varanasi even more congested and a lot of people there. So that may sound like negative, but it is what it is. It has all this ancientness and alleyways and crazy markets and religious people walking around and people visiting for religious reasons. But in midst of all this, there is a lot of people. There are a lot of people there, and the roads are still being broadened in the old city. Even the current prime minister has recently tried to broaden some of the Ghats, the streets near the Ghats are the banks in Varanasi. So basically there's a lot of narrow ways, and that causes a lot of congestion, and there are a lot of people from the villages that are moving into Varanasi. So yeah, you will see all of that, and you will see lots of cows, and you will see lots of like different kinds of carts selling things, walking along. All the businesses are being conducted in the midst of it. So there are people carrying sacks of rice and dal and all kinds of things on the street. The vegetables are being sold, fruits are being sold all on the streets, while you're also driving and biking. And so yeah, I mean, it's a chaotic, very chaotic scenery, the old part of Varanasi. And the new parts of Varanasi, if you want to call it, a bit more suburban for India. Not for US, it's not suburban, but
right, not by the same standards. For suburban, meaning like that it was actually the colonies were actually planned for residential area for cars. They thought about parking when they constructed some of the buildings and things like that.
Yeah. It's still not suburbs. It's just relatively broader streets there where two cars can enter at the same time on the street, one going and one coming. That's broad in India.
Right. That's a good description. So it is not that different from where we live as far as the kind of commerce and things that you'll see. There are a lot of little shops, but the population seems to be excessively jammed, concentrated there. Plus, just all of the tourism and the autos and the cycle rickshaws. It's just really condensed. So because this is a extremely old city, so in the old part of the city, the gullies or the alleyways are just winding through, and there was no, these are for footpaths and for cows and whatnot. So they do have some regiments of cleaning the street. There are few places in India that have so much cow poo everywhere. I mean, you will step in it. There's no way to avoid just the excessive amount of cow poo. And then with that, there's trash and there's, rats and stuff. So that's definitely just a reality.
But some people might like that, especially, from the Western context. Some people might like that because it's so raw and so different.
Yeah.
And so... But, living in India, a lot of times, we live in a tier 2 city in India, and when we visit another Indian city, we have to just allow it to be what it is. But it's not always relaxing, or because we want to go sometimes to a place that's cleaner or more scenic or more where we can actually breathe in greenery, and all of those things are definitely not so in Varanasi, for us especially. But if you're coming from the West, or if you're coming from other big cities in India, it is something very different. So Varanasi has a lot of similarities in terms of where we live, so it wasn't like a huge deal for us to go there. But we still want to give you guys our experience, which is going to be different than some other Western person who goes to Varanasi.
How many times have you been there?
Maybe like 5-8 times in my life. 6 times, 7, 8 times. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's about the same as me, actually. Just for various different visits. I did a language study course there when about 12, 13 years back, and that was my first exposure.
Yeah, but I went there when I was a child also.
You went for 35 years ago.
And I have relatives there too. So
what are some other things you're likely to see in Banaras, besides the gullies and the small alleyways and vegetable sellers?
One of the things I noticed is that there are 3 different ways to travel. One is from ghat to ghat. So like all these staircases that look like these the staircase on the banks.
Yeah, there's like a elevated platform almost.
Elevated platform with staircase.
Yeah.
Basically, you can walk from ghat to ghat. from bank to bank, and you can actually cover more distance than going on this in the street.
Oh yeah.
Because
Much
there's
faster.
not a lot of cows there. There's not a lot of like traffic. Because there's only foot traffic there. So then the next level after that is these narrow gullies right behind, like right when you climb up those stairs.
Yeah.
It's the gullies that will take you, winding gullies.
The
alleyways. And those alleyways, they call it gullies.
Yes.
And then those gullies will lead you from one ghat to another ghat, but they're very confusing, and that you can get lost in there as well.
And that's where you find a lot of the cool old little shops and some of the more like hippie hangouts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's
especially near, what
likely.
is the name of the temple there? Vishwanath Temple. It's called Kashi Vishwanath Temple. Yeah, and also the Sankat Mochan Hanuman Temple. Those two places. But right outside of, I believe, the Vishwanath Temple, there is these lanes where a lot of tourists, I noticed, because I went out there to buy some religious items, and a lot of people were there, like a lot of Westerners were there and walking around. It seemed like it was a very popular area. I don't remember the name of that street, but it was right around Vishwanath Temple area. So
what kind of things are you going to see on the ghats? If you actually go to the ghat, what would you actually see over there? A lot of sadhus who will be walking around, monks, religious monks. And the reason how you can tell someone is a monk is if they're wearing all orange. And you want to talk about what a sadhu is a little bit, Ben?
Sadhu is generally an unmarried celibate religious monk who is walking around, usually lives off of other people's givings and donations, but they also may have religious order that they might be a part of, and they may live in their own ashrams, or they may live in their own temple courtyard or something like that. It's not always clear cut of how sadhus live and where they live. There's a lot of freedom in where they can live. They can live on the street, they can live in ashrams, they can live in their own house. There's really not a one set rule for sadhu, but basically they're celibate people, and of course, not all the sadhus are very serious in their endeavor to pursue spirituality and true enlightenment, if you want to call it. Many sadhus and sannyasis may look like sadhus, but they could be just scammers. They could be people who are just out there to get money from tourists, and they may look like sadhus, but they are actually just going to give you some sort of BS and then keep going and get your money. And that they do that to Indian tourists, but also to the foreign tourists.
Mm-hmm. So one interesting thing that we saw, I think 2 trips back, was we were on the Ghats, and this was in May. It was in the middle of the day, and it was May, so you can imagine how hot it was. May and June are the hot season in India. So we were walking with our kids and some friends and their kids, so we had a whole bunch of kids who were walking around. We just wanted to see what was going down around in Asi Ghat, in some of the main area over there. Yeah, which means Asi means 80 ghats. So there's roughly 80 different ghats in Banaras. So we were walking around and we saw a snake charmer, which I know is so stereotypical India, and
we don't see that though anywhere else.
But it's stereotyped, but you don't really hardly see them
because they're
anywhere.
Fading away.
It's a dying art. So we actually decided we were gonna take his picture and actually see his performance with Cobra, which was pretty interesting because we really don't see that where we live at all. So it was really interesting. The kids were completely mesmerized. I was honestly pretty mesmerized myself. So if you'll follow our social media, I'll post a picture of that. But the snake charmer is really a dying art. It's not, back in the old days, there are not so many different kinds of jobs and things that you could find in India, and agricultural type of jobs connected with wildlife and animals and these kind of things were things that you could actually do and earn a living. And nowadays you can't earn a living as a snake charmer. Hardly anyone wants to do that. Everyone wants to make their kid a doctor and engineer. That all of these snake charmers and their kids they're probably trying to get their kids into English medium schools, and the way of the future is educating your kids. So what else are we likely to see? Anything else we're likely to see? One thing that you always joke about is how many guys riding around on their bullet are riding around the gullies with a gamcha.
Gamcha is very popular. It's like what do you call it?
It's scarf. Not a scarf, I guess. But
scarf. Usually in the white and saffron and red and green. Those are the popular colors. One of the things is like a lot of people, because it is a city of walking, one of the things one could do is take a walking tour, especially if you're not from there and if you are a tourist. It would be good to do a walking tour. And one of our friends has a company there called Varanasi Walks, and you can check it out on TripAdvisor or whatever.
So one other thing that Varanasi is known for is kind of a hippie hangout. And now I feel that it's not just for the hippies. So many people from different countries are enjoying the raw nature of Varanasi, and just it's a very raw place. I think that's kind of the reaction that you would get. So there are many ashrams there. There are many yoga sites there as well. And for Indians, there's tons of things to see as well. And what's one other thing you're likely to hear about?
It is a student city. Varanasi is home to Banaras Hindu University, which is quite a large university and has a very decent reputation in North India. It is also the IIT. Their engineering section is the IIT. So a lot of people come there to study, and it has a very nice campus.
Can you explain what is IIT?
IIT is equivalent of an Ivy League engineering school in America. So basically it is highly reputable, probably more difficult to get into IITs than to Harvard in India at least. Definitely it is.
So let's talk about a little bit what the differences would be, or what are some of the reactions that you would have as an Indian person traveling to Banaras, and what are some of the reactions that you might have as a person that's never been to India as a foreigner?
I would say that foreigners would look for enlightenment in a different way, because the story is very different their religious journey is different. People are not there to just offer some rituals and things, but they're actually looking for some sort of specific guidance, spiritual guidance, which is not true for most traditional Indians. There's an awakening in the newer generation Indians maybe that are coming from big cities to look for that kind of spiritual awakening in religious centers in India, or even yoga classes are not very popular in India with the traditional people. The way Western crowd wants to consume yoga, it's very different. So basically, for a Western crowd, you would gravitate towards certain centers that you will find on Lonely Planet or one of these other sites that are more catered. They actually cater to foreign crowd rather than Indian crowd. There's Ayurvedic treatment classes. There's language classes for Hindi. There are a lot of people who come to Varanasi Hindu University, Banaras Hindu University for learning different kinds of musical instruments and whatnot. So
dance also. Some people come for learning dance.
The Indian tourists, their interests, some of them might be the same, or they will end up doing the same things. But one of the big draws in Varanasi is to visit the temples and offer your puja or worship or the rituals that are done there, maybe for your dead relative or for your children or for yourself or for whatever it is.
And secondly would be the Aarti. Ganga Aarti would be a huge attraction. And that mostly people go to the main ghats there, on Asi Ghat, to watch the Aarti, although it does go all the way down. up and down the river. So one of the things about Aarti is that you want to leave a considerable amount of time to get down to the Ghat, and you want to arrive early for sure. It's around sunset. It's right before sunset that it takes place, so this time kind of shifts, and it is extremely crowded, and it'll be very difficult to find a parking spot if you're driving or taking an auto or walking. It's the most crazy time of the day for traffic. So get there early, try to enjoy just people watching. When we were there, they actually had some dancing going on, some Kathak dancing going on and performances on the side of they made a small stage. We also noticed this time they had a steamer, not a steamer, like a cruise boat going up and down the river, which was hilarious for me to see. That this has now become, so commercialized. Usually people will sit in the little hand-rown 1,000-year-old wooden boats, the lakdi wala nao jo hota hai. It's really funny to see this cruise ship going by during Aarti, but that would be something that I think most people would be interested in. Indians and foreigners alike.
One of the things is the parking is extremely difficult in the old city. So even the wiki says that the most interesting area to stay is around the Ghats, the banks where what we're talking about, the river banks, which are the main attractions for foreigners and are close to the religious attractions, but it is extremely noisy and the accommodation there is subpar. So basically, if you want a more comfortable stay a little bit away from the Ghats into the town and then visit the Ghats and then go back into a better accommodation. If you like hostels, or if you're going to do it in an economic way and don't want to stay too far from the Ghats, then you can stay on the Ghats. Of course, there's stuff for all budget sizes. There are hostels, there are mid-range, upper-range accommodations there. And there are some real hippie hangouts in Varanasi.
Yeah. You want to talk about some of those?
Jessica went to Blue Lassi, which is famous for their different, more flavored lassis, which are not common. Flavored lassi is not common in India.
I have to tell you about this experience, and I just appreciate that. I want you to say that again. Is it lassi, or is it, say it exactly like you said, lassi?
Lassi.
Lassi. This is one of the most mispronounced words in Hindi that I have heard is, oh yeah, let's get a mango lassi. It's it's not a lassi, it's a lassi. So anyway, just a tip there. So when I went to Blue Lassi this time, I took the kids and I walked through the gullies. And one other tip, if you have children with you, just carry the kids if you don't want them to get really dirty. Or our son was kind of he lives in India, so he knows to avoid garbage piles and stuff, but it's just extremely crowded and you can get clipped by motorcycle going by or scooter or cycle going by. So my tip is to carry your kids or have a really strong, small stroller that you're going to take through on the street. So I would not just hold the kid's hand and let them walk around on the street, and it's just quite dirty and dangerous. So yeah, I took the kids to Blue Lassi, and it was so interesting when I went because I'm hanging out there and the kids are loving it and enjoying the drinks. And the thing about lassi is that it needs to be made by hand. When you put it in a blender, which is how a lot of the restaurants make it, we know nowadays scientifically that it kills all the, it shakes up the bacteria, the probiotics that are in the yogurt. It disturbs them, and so they get lost or killed or whatever in the process. So how it's been made for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years with the yogurt is that you take it from one cup to the other and you pour it back and forth until it's mixed. And so this is how the guy was making it. This just describes the new India so well, the confluence of new and old India. I'm sitting there in the shop. It's this dinky little shop, and he has pictures of people's passports, pictures all over the wall because it's become so popular and one of those places that you have to visit. As he's making his lassi, squatting down, sitting there in his little bowl that he has, and he's hand mixing each and every single one, he has an investment advisor sitting there talking to him about how much money he needs to save for his kids' college future, his kids' college in the future. And I'm thinking, this guy has it made. I mean, he has capitalized on something that he's been doing for 3 generations, at least, is what he told me. He's been doing for 3 generations. And his grandparents probably could have never imagined the amount of money that he was talking about saving for his kids' college. So just the fact that he was there right at the right time and had really taken it to the next level with social media and with TripAdvisor, Lonely Planet, and getting involved in all these commercial marketing channels, basically. So I loved that because, you know, I'm sitting there listening as he's speaking with him, and maybe to the tourist eye, you wouldn't really notice what was going on, but it was really interesting to me as he was talking about this. And so I just said to him, you know, आप लस्सी बना के अपने बच्चों को college भेज रहे हैं. And he said, yeah, this is what I've been doing for 27 years. So thought that was pretty incredible.
Yeah. That being said, it is overpriced lassis.
It is overpriced, but the experience is definitely worth your 80 rupees. You'll only pay 30 rupees if you go somewhere else.
Was it 80 rupees?
Some were 80 rupees, some were 80 rupees, and some of the more exotic ones were like 100, over 100.
It is just definitely become one of those places that's not normal price lassis are. In a place like Varanasi would be only like 40, 50 rupees.
Yeah. But he does have a lot of exotic fruits and different things.
This time when we were in Varanasi, we stayed in Sigra, which is a little bit away from the chaotic part of Varanasi, but it is the up-and-coming place in Varanasi. Sigra has the new KFC in Varanasi. That's where a lot of people, like even we even saw tourists there. If you want more westernized food, then you would go there. Better restaurants, there's McDonald's, KFC out in Sigra.
So one other thing that was interesting about that area, and I think one thing for Westerners that's really shocking about Banaras is the burning Ghats. So this is where people come, many people from all over India and even some from different countries who have passed away in different countries. This is where people come to have their bodies burned. So one thing about this ritual is that women are traditionally not allowed. And there's a certain caste of people who do this kind of work for the society. So you can watch, there are some documentaries on Netflix about it. And one of our favorite documentaries that we always mention is The Story of India with Michael Wood. And there's some about Varanasi in that documentary. And it does talk a bit about the caste that does perform the burning of the dead bodies. So that's one thing that you will see for sure. You cannot get out of Varanasi without seeing the funeral procession going on. And so you'll hear the people walking through the street, the men usually, with the body wrapped in orange cloth, and be carrying down the street chanting. They'll have some incense, and they'll be saying Ram Nam Satya Hai, Ram Nam Satya Hai, which means God's name is true, or Ram's name is true, but that can also be used as a general word for God's name. That's what's going on there, and they are usually headed to the Ghat for the body to be burned. You can watch that ceremony going on. It basically day and night. The fires are constantly going. There's constantly bodies being burned. That is called Manikarnika Ghat. It is in the Asi Ghat line there. So if you go on any boat tour, they will most likely take you by the burning Ghat, because they know that that's something that's very interesting to people. And if this is your first city in India, well, first of all, I wouldn't necessarily recommend Varanasi be the first city in India you ever visit, because it is quite shocking if you haven't seen some of the more pristine or more clean or nicer places. The grunginess might shock you to a level of you may not recover from that shock. So ease into it, and I wouldn't make that your first stop on the trip if you're a Westerner. So other hippie hangouts,
Again, there's a hippie crowd that wants to smoke stuff. So, of course, we don't know what those hangouts are. But I'm sure you can find them on very easily.
Some of the cafes that we might recommend for hippie stuff, one would be Open Hand Cafe. We know the people that run that. It's an exceptional cafe there. And we also went to Pizzeria Vatica. The Brown Bread Bakery is another one that we thought was pretty great as well. So any other hippie hangouts that you want to specifically mention that we've personally experienced?
Not hippie places, but there is another lassi store that's very famous, Shiv Lassi Bhandar. I wasn't able to go there, but it was supposed to be good. There's also Chole Bhature place that I ate at. It was called Bhole Chature, which is a play on words. But Bhole Chature is also pretty good that I noticed.
Yeah, some of the popular food would be jalebi and puri sabzi. Is that popular?
Puri sabzi, yeah.
Puri sabzi would be a really popular
lassis.
Food to experience Banaras. Okay, and we got to talk about the Banaras Panwala. So Banaras is known for having a lot of pan sellers, which pan is a mix of all kinds of different nuts, and the main ingredient is betel nut, which is kind of produces this red color. If you put tobacco in the pan, it can be slightly intoxicating, but there's also meetha pan, which is just sweet pan, and it's all these little spices and nut and different kinds of flavorings that you put inside of a leaf. And these guys are sitting there on the side inside these alleyways. They will roll it up for you, and they fold it for you, and you just pop it in your mouth and you chew on it. I mean, the taste is definitely an acquired taste if you did not grow up eating it. It's something you should definitely try out. And I even have seen in some different advertisements and stuff, there's this burning pan, which just came in our city, and we should go try it out. Where basically they light the pan on fire, and you're supposed to try and eat it, which I don't know, that would be kind of an interesting thing to experience. So pan, check out pan, Paan, and you'll see these guys.
Pan is available all over India, but in Varanasi it's especially popular.
Yeah, and there's some Bollywood song too, Yeah. Gayi ke pan Banaras wala.
Yeah.
Which makes it even more fun. So what else? What other things do we need to share about Banaras?
One of our friends teaches Hindi in Varanasi.
Yes.
So basically, if any of you are interested in learning Hindi, you can get in touch with us. We can give you his info.
We'll put it in the show notes, his information and his website. So yeah, let's talk about how do you get to Banaras. They have a small airport. You've flown there before.
Yeah, from Delhi to Varanasi would be very easy to get to with a flight. But if you want to go by train, then I believe Rajdhani Express, Rajdhani, Rajdhani Express is your best bet. Otherwise, all other trains can get late or start late or get really delayed in the middle. So Rajdhani I would recommend. Or if you want to go by bus, there's overnight bus. There are all kinds of things there. But if you have kids, then may not be the best. If you're a solo traveler, then you can do that. You can pretty much, in India is, one of the cheapest traveling destinations in the world. If you know what you're doing, then it could be cheap. But if you want to be a bit more comfortable and avoid taking any unnecessary risk.
So some people have asked about, what do you buy there? What are the nice things to shop for while you're in Banaras? And Banaras silk is extremely famous across India, and saris are one of the more well-known things that people buy. So Banaras silk sari is one of the highly desired things to buy in Banaras.
Other silk products.
And other silk products like scarves,
other types of handloom,
pillow covers,
bed sheets, type of things.
Yeah, really, really nicely done. One of the really cool things that we were able to do when we were just there a few months back is go outside of Banaras. And Sarnath, like we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, is where Buddha had given his first sermon, and so that was definitely worth seeing. And this time, with our kids, we went out to Rajdari.
But Rajdari and another place adjacent to that is like waterfalls and hilly area. Turned out to be a really great outing for us.
It's a breath of fresh air to go out there. It's not crowded. You're going through the villages, which is really eye-opening just to drive through the villages of India anytime you can have that experience. I highly recommend it. And so this park there had 2 major waterfalls, and you can get out and dip your feet in, and some people were swimming. We let our kids swim in one of the more calm areas, and it was just fantastic and just really breathtaking to see the scenery. We did see quite a bit of animals. We had one monkey experience, which every good trip and holiday in India has some kind of monkey experience. So one of the kids we were traveling was throwing up, and so we pulled over the car, and the monkeys started like coming towards us right away. And these are the nasty monkeys. There are several varieties of monkey in India actually, but the kind of nasty ones that you want to avoid are the urban monkeys like these ones. And they were literally coming towards us to try and get the food out of the kid's hand. I think he had some little chips in his hand or something. And so we all started to panic, and we snapped the doors shut, and the kids are all screaming, like, because the monkeys are coming up to attack the car. So some of our stuff had fallen out onto the road, and we had to scare the monkeys away to get the stuff back. It was just weird. We saw peacocks and all kinds of different other beautiful wildlife. So it is a very serene experience, beautiful experience. So I would highly recommend checking that out. So I just want to share a funny story before we close it out. A few years back, I was sitting in a cafe, and it was this like kind of, as you can imagine. I'm sitting in a cafe with my Hindi study books, and we were just enjoying ourselves with a cup of coffee, because you don't get that in many places in India. Really, really good cup of coffee, especially back several years. And we were sitting in this cafe and hearing the temple bells going on all sides, enjoying the smells of the incense from the temples and the livestock walking by, the cows and all whatnot. And this restaurant has these flowers. There's all over the walls, and we're sitting next to these folks, and we assumed that he's the tour guide, and she's taking a tour there. She's a Japanese girl and an Indian guy, and he's actually speaking in like fluent Japanese. So Banaras is a place that it seems like it's this ancient place, and people really are there that come straight from the village, have had no other experience except for the village. And then it's also strangely this like weird global city where people are not what they seem, and people are connected to the world in ways that you might never imagine. So there's a lot of mystery to be found there. There's a lot of beauty to be found there, and we hope that you love your next visit to the holy city of Banaras.